Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
This is All India Radio. Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday's edition of Market Mantra, the program in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I am Gaurang Dhawanlal and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंच के इस अंक में आप सभी सुनने वालों का स्वागत। आधे घंटे के इस कार्यक्रम में प्रतिदिन की तरह हम लाएंगे आप तक आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार की ताजा खबरें, साथ ही उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए आज कार्यक्रम में ऑनलाइन आमंत्रित हैं बाजार विश्लेषक अविनाश गोरक्षकर। अविनाश जी नमस्कार, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत।
हाँ, गुड इवनिंग
जी। और सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं गौरा धवनलाल।
Thank you, Vishal, and Avinashji, welcome to the program. A quick look at the headlines. Union Government approves Production-Linked Incentive Scheme 2.0 for IT hardware, an outlay of 17,000 crore rupees. Union Cabinet gives nod for 1,08,000 crore rupees fertilizer subsidy for the Kharif season this year, and key domestic indices log losses of more than 0.5%. Sensex finishes below 61,600 points. Nifty settles below 18,200 level.
केंद्र सरकार ने आईटी हार्डवेयर क्षेत्र के लिए उत्पादन से जुड़ी प्रोत्साहन योजना के दूसरे चरण को मंजूरी दी। 17,000 करोड़ रुपए की आवंटित। केंद्रीय मंत्रिमंडल ने इस वर्ष खरीफ मौसम के लिए 1,08,000 करोड़ रुपए की उर्वरक सब्सिडी को स्वीकृति दी। और घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में 0.5% से अधिक का नुकसान। सेंसेक्स 61,600 अंक से नीचे हुआ बंद। निफ्टी 18,200 के स्तर से नीचे आया। कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत सबसे पहले मंत्रिमंडल के फैसले से कर लेते हैं। केंद्र सरकार ने आईटी हार्डवेयर क्षेत्र के लिए उत्पादन से संबद्ध प्रोत्साहन योजना के दूसरे चरण को मंजूरी दे दी है। इसके लिए 17,000 करोड़ रुपए आवंटित किए गए हैं। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी की अध्यक्षता में नई दिल्ली में आज मंत्रिमंडल की बैठक में ये निर्णय लिया गया। इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स और सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी मंत्री अश्विनी वैष्णव ने कहा कि इस योजना का कार्यकाल 6 वर्ष का है।
In fact, the minister expressed confidence that this decision will create more than 2 lakh employment opportunities, including 75,000 direct jobs. He said electronics manufacturing has witnessed consistent growth with a 17% compounded annual growth rate in the last 8 years. And this year, it has crossed a major landmark of $105 billion. Mr. Vaishnav said India has become the world's second largest manufacturer of mobile phones, and the export of mobile phones crossed a major milestone of $11 billion this year. The minister said India is emerging as a major electronics manufacturing country, and IT hardware companies have shown interest in establishing manufacturing facilities in the country. Avinashji, we have seen that over the past few sessions, in fact, in past year, software industries have taken a beating, the service sector has. In fact, the hardware IT industry is also kind of struggling to catch up because the others have really moved up and taken a leap in many areas. What do you think of this cabinet decision?
No, I think the IT hardware industry, will definitely benefit significantly over the medium to long term, because a lot of investments were not coming up in the absence of any fiscal incentives. Now, this 6-year scheme which the government has announced, I think it will definitely give a fillip to new investments, especially, from existing IT companies. Obviously, standalone companies, IT hardware companies are very limited, but companies which are into software usually also have hardware facilities, especially for servers and basically co-location kind of services. So I think it's not going to result in any immediate upside for these companies, but yes, whatever investments they make under this PLI scheme which has been announced, I think it will definitely facilitate and encourage money to come into the IT hardware segment, which was missing for a long time. And I think that will obviously also generate a lot of employment, a lot of hard investment in the country. So I think net it's a good positive, but one will have to probably wait for the big, IT majors to see what kind of investment plans they would announce after looking at this policy. So I think it's better to wait and watch, but yes, medium to long term over the next, say, 2 to 3 years, this will be positive for the entire IT industry as a whole because hardware and software go along with each other.
जी अविनाश जी, मंत्री महोदय ने ये भी कहा कि जो भारत का जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स विनिर्माण का जो एक उद्योग है वो तकरीबन 17% कंपाउंड एनुअल ग्रोथ के लिहाज से रेट से बढ़ा है पिछले 8 सालों में, और अब ये इस वर्ष 105 बिलियन अमेरिकी डॉलर के लैंडमार्क को भी पार कर गया है। तो भारत का जो विनिर्माण की जो एक क्षेत्र है, खासतौर पर इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स के क्षेत्र में, ये हम चाइना से क्या अब हम चीन से इस दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहे हैं या अभी हमें उसके समकक्ष आने में वक्त लगेगा?
नहीं, बिल्कुल। देखिए, मुझे लग रहा है कि इंडिया का जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सेक्टर है वो भी बहुत तेजी से ग्रो कर रहा है और आने वाले अगले 4-5 साल में और भी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इंडिया में आएंगे। आई थिंक मिसाल के तौर पे अभी एप्पल ने, फॉक्सकॉन ने अभी इंडिया में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फैसिलिटी करने की बात की है। अभी इन्वेस्टमेंट जब ऐसे बड़े मेजर कंपनी से आता है जो पहले एशिया में जाता था, चाइना में जाता था, तो इसका क्लियर मतलब है कि डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को मेक इन इंडिया के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से काफी बूस्ट मिल रहा है और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक एक्सपोर्ट बहुत अच्छी तरह से बढ़ेंगे। स्पेशली अगर हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स में एंटरटेनमेंट इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स की बात करें, मोबाइल फोन्स की बात करें, तो यहाँ पे अभी अगले 4-5 साल में काफी हद तक स्मार्टफोन्स और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक के आइटम इंडिया में ही बनेंगे। तो उससे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक आइटम्स को नॉट ओनली डोमेस्टिक मार्केट मिलेगा बट एक्सपोर्ट के लिए भी अच्छी क्षमता मिलेगी, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो खर्चा है, कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन है, वो इंडिया में काफी कम है। तो उसलिए एक्सपोर्ट का भी पोटेंशियल आने वाले 3-4 साल में काफी अच्छा लगेगा। तो ओवरऑल ये ट्रेंड जो है वो चलता रहेगा।
जी, बढ़ते हैं अगली खबर की ओर। मंत्रिमंडल ने एक और फैसला लिया है। कैबिनेट ने, सरकार ने इस वर्ष खरीफ मौसम के लिए उर्वरक सब्सिडी के रूप में 1,08,000 करोड़ रुपए खर्च करने का निर्णय लिया है। मंत्रिमंडल की बैठक के बाद केंद्रीय रसायन और उर्वरक मंत्री डॉक्टर मनसुख मांडविया ने कहा कि उर्वरक के मूल्य में कोई वृद्धि नहीं की जाएगी। केंद्रीय मंत्री ने कहा कि यूरिया पर सब्सिडी के लिए 70,000 करोड़ रुपए और डीएपी के लिए 38,000 करोड़ रुपए की सब्सिडी निर्धारित की गई है। उन्होंने कहा कि देश के किसानों को अन्य देशों की तुलना में कम कीमत पर उर्वरक उपलब्ध हैं। वैश्विक स्तर पर उर्वरकों की कीमतों में वृद्धि के बावजूद सरकार ने किसानों को किफायती मूल्य पर उर्वरक उपलब्ध कराया है।
Avinashi, when we talk of the agriculture sector, we also know that this is one great area where India can provide services across the world. I think Europe is struggling for different reasons. The Ukraine war is still continuing. There were issues of concern in terms of, food stability and providing food across. Those concerns, of course, have come onto the back burner, but they still exist. Now, measures like this, and of course, subsidy has a cost, but how do you think this will affect the balance of, that are we making our own food crops cheaper? Because we're also exporting the same. Is this cost being built into our exports also?
No, definitely. See, because subsidies are definitely going to prove to be a short-term cost for the government. One thing is very clear that it is a very large agri-economy, and I think food security is very important. Fortunately, despite the Russia-Ukraine war, India has been one of those countries where food inflation has been under control, food production has been stable, our buffer system has also been quite adequate. So I think definitely all the agro companies, especially the fertilizer companies, the agrochemical companies will benefit, because largely the fertilizer companies, because urea, is one major input which is used by farmers all across India. So these companies will definitely see that, the government has supported them. And since agri is a very, sensitive topic where pricing is regulated, I believe that, this is definitely a good sign in the longer term. In going next 2 to 3 years, you mentioned rightly that, Europe is one area where Indian companies can export fertilizers as well as agrochemicals, but currently the situation is volatile. The headwinds clearly indicate that demand has gone down. So I think domestic market in India can provide a good opportunity in the very near term. So these are all long-term initiatives which I think will benefit the fertilizer sector.
Talking about the effect that any government policy has on the market, what do you think is the gestation period for policies like this, whether it's a PLI or any other incentivization, for it to have some kind of reflective effect on the stock market in the sectors?
See, I think any scheme which is announced by the government for any sector is a long-term kind of scheme which possibly takes at least 3 to 5 years before we see the material impact.
Okay.
This is very much visible, in sectors like auto components, lithium batteries, where a lot of investment has been planned. But I think the most important thing is that PLI benefits are, useful for only those companies which are willing to put upfront. So I think the process of getting the benefit will obviously come once the entire project is on stream. And that is probably going to take at least the next, 3 to 4 years before we see any material benefits trickling in. But it is definitely a very strong force to basically build capital in the country. And that is something which the government has been encouraging by, its Make in India manufacturing objective. So it's going to be a matter of time before we see the actual results. But definitely capital formation in the country is always a positive sign.
Do you think for the investor, when we're looking at the macro factors which are affecting or going to affect the economy, would it be safe to say that, when you see something like this, does the market respond? And you said it is a longer term. So should this be considered as a factor for investment in the mid or to long term?
Yeah, I think if the investment time frame is at least in the next, 2 to 3 years, then I think this factor can be considered because unfortunately in the very near term, maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, the material benefits may not be visible. But investors who are taking a long-term view on any company or sector for the next, 2 to 3 years and financial year can definitely look at these kind of triggers also. However, the market will obviously react, only once the operation starts from these companies on the PLI project, and then they will probably, re-rate such kind of companies. But till then, it will be a kind of an accumulation phase. So I think you need to really take a 2 to 3 year call if you want to just bet on the PLI announcement, which unfortunately will not have any impact in the short term. But yes, in the longer term, they will definitely play out positively.
Right. In fact, Avinashi, that's great because that gives us a good context, to giving a larger picture for investors. We move on to our next story. The Union government has approved the signing of a project collaboration agreement between the Department of Health Research and the World Health Organization on assistive technology. The agreement was approved at the Union Cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi today. This collaboration aims at working towards drawing global attention towards access to assistive technology, fostering research and innovation, and developing and disseminating appropriate training programs.
और अब रुक करते हैं शेयर बाजार का। घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में आज 0.5% से अधिक की गिरावट दर्ज हुई। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 61,600 अंक से नीचे बंद हुआ, जबकि नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 18,200 के स्तर से नीचे आ गया। वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों से मिले कमजोर संकेतों के कारण दोनों सूचकांकों में यह आज गिरावट देखी गई। सेंसेक्स 372 अंक लुढ़ककर 61,561 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 105 अंक फिसलकर 18,182 पर आ गया। व्यापक बाजार की बात करें तो बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 0.16% नुकसान में रहा, जबकि स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स 0.25% की बढ़त के साथ बंद हुआ।
Key domestic indices today declined more than 0.5%. The BSE Sensex closed below 61,600 points, while the NSE Nifty settled below 18,200 level. Both indices declined amid negative cues from global share markets. The Sensex fell 372 points to finish at 61,561. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange slipped 105 points to end at 18,182. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap index declined 0.16%, while the small-cap index added 0.25%. In the Sensex index, which is a pack of 30 companies, shares of 7 firms rose while 23 fell. IndusInd Bank was the top gainer as it surged 1.3%, followed by ITC, which climbed 0.9%. Bharti Airtel gained 0.7%. On the other hand, Kotak Bank declined 1.8%. HCL Tech and TCS both fell 1.5%. In sectoral indices at the BSE, 4 sectors posted gains while 16 suffered losses. Healthcare sector rose 0.2%, while auto and FMCG both sectors added marginally by 0.1% each. On the other side, the realty sector declined 1.3%, consumer durables fell 1%, and the tech sector slipped 0.9%. The overall market breadth was negative as shares of 1,617 companies rose, while those of 1,877 companies fell. A total of 131 shares remained unchanged. Avinash, we have seen that the market last week did very well. I think we surprised everyone with the market moving upwards, and now it has been for the past 2 days. Is this a correction? Is this a coming down? And a layered question to this, have those sectors and shares gone up? The ones that went up, have those come down, or is there a sectoral shift?
I think clearly, the market the last few weeks has been running up because FIs have been pumping in a huge amount of money in the Indian markets. And I think that is the main reason why the markets have been rising, because liquidity has been extremely strong. Like today, what we saw was a little bit of profit booking. The markets had become a little top heavy. I think most of the investors are preferring to book profits before, the market touches another record high. Most importantly, today's FI data points out that the figure for FI inflows has come down drastically to just about 145 crores, which was about 1400 crores yesterday. So I think, once the FI flows obviously trickle down to smaller numbers, that is a sign where possibly the markets would consolidate and may see a bigger correction. My sense is that now with the earnings season almost complete, the next trigger for the markets would be the monsoon factor, how good the monsoon factor plays out, and obviously how inflation then definitely takes off. I think these two data points are not something which the markets would be keenly awaiting for further re-rating the market. So there's been no sort of panic, but a huge profit booking kind of trend in the market, both across large caps as well as mid caps, and that's why we have seen the Sensex and the Nifty. But yes, in the longer term, hopefully if FI flows don't accelerate and are not consistent, then we could see lower levels, which I think one will have to then take a fresh review and evaluate.
जी अविनाश जी, आपने इन्फ्लेशन की बात की, तो इन्फ्लेशन तो अभी काबू में दिख रही है और काफी बड़ी राहत की स्थिति है महंगाई के मोर्चे पर। अगर हम देखें तो इसका तो एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट बाजार पे दिखने को मिलेगा हमें।
बिल्कुल, देखिए इन्फ्लेशन एक बहुत बड़ा कंसर्न मार्केट के लिए था, और अभी जो सीपीआई के नंबर आ गए हैं, डब्ल्यूपीआई के नंबर, इसमें एक बात तो क्लियर दिख रही है कि कहीं ना कहीं जो आरबीआई ने पॉज किया था पिछली बार, उन्होंने अच्छी तरह से मार्केट को इवैल्यूएट किया था। लेकिन देखिए मार्केट ये भी देखेगी कि आने वाला जो मानसून फैक्टर है, बारिश किस तरह से आए, कैसा इफेक्टिव रहेगी, क्योंकि आईएमडी का फाइनल रिपोर्ट आना बाकी है। मेरे ख्याल से जब फाइनल रिपोर्ट आएगी तभी मार्केट को शायद ज्यादा दिलासा होगा, क्योंकि मानसून से काफी सेक्टर प्रभावित होते हैं, जैसे कि सीमेंट है, उसके बाद ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर है, रियल एस्टेट है, सीमेंट बिल्डिंग प्रोडक्ट्स है। तो मेरे ख्याल से रूरल डेवलपमेंट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट, स्पेशली इवन एफएमसीजी कंपनीज की बात करें तो मुझे लग रहा है कि देखिए इन्फ्लेशन ये सारे सेक्टर में आपको अच्छी तेजी देखने को मिलेगी, मार्केट का सेंटिमेंट भी बदलेगा, और सेकंड हाफ मुझे लग रहा है कि FY 23-24 का बहुत ही अच्छा साबित हो सकता है, क्योंकि रूरल डिमांड पिछले 1-2 साल से काफी नरम थी। तो मेरे ख्याल से इन्फ्लेशन के 1-2 और महीने के नंबर आने के बाद मार्केट को थोड़ा और कॉन्फिडेंस आएगा, लेकिन मानसून अगर ठीक ठाक होता है तो ये सिग्नल मार्केट पॉजिटिवली लेगी।
You spoke earlier, Avinash, of profit booking. What is this profit booking reflective of? Is it a trust factor in the market, or has volatility become a way so people are just trying to, preempt another loss?
No, I think profit booking, is important because what we have seen is the markets have developed in a very short time span and have recorded solid gains. So, from the level of 18,000, we have seen a very strong upside to roughly 18,300. Everybody in the market till a couple of days back was saying that we could now reach further new highs. So whenever such, developments happen in the market, obviously the smarter investors prefer to book some profits, because currently the market is moving up purely on the FI liquidity factor. Although inflation is now showing signs of coming down, clearly I think, the FI flows have been significant, which nobody had expected earlier. So, the FI flows are the main reason why the markets had gone up, and probably people are booking profits to ensure that they can reinvest in good companies at lower levels, wherever the earnings recovery, wherever the business is consistent. Profit booking is a very ongoing feature in a volatile market like, India, where I think in a short time span, investors have made a lot of money, so they are trying to book out, some of their gains.
Right. So, do you think that the Fed's decisions where, inflation seems to have stabilized in the US, and now FIs are seeing that rate interest increases are not going to happen so frequently in the near future? Do you think that is a good thing for us also to predict and say, okay, they're going to be coming in here, so let's book the profits and ride the market?
No, I think, see, my guess is that as of now, markets would be keenly looking at what Mr. Powell, comments in the coming Fed policy. Although he has clearly stated that, there would be a pause, but I think it all depends on clearly how inflation is tackled and most importantly, how the dollar moves against the other emerging currency. The debt, ceiling kind of issue in US is still not solved. In case there is a default in the markets and interest rates, move up in US markets, then that would obviously have some impact on inflation. So I think it's a matter of time. Maybe another couple of weeks we'll get some clarity. But I think net profit booking has got nothing to do with falling inflation. In fact, if inflation falls, the markets would definitely take it as a big positive. I think investors have made a lot of money in the last few weeks, and they are definitely profit booking to ensure that, they keep a reserve of cash whenever the markets correct. So probably that is the reason. Inflation going down is in fact positive for the market. It will actually drive the markets going forward.
राइट जी। अविनाश जी, बैंकिंग शेयरों की बात करें तो आप बैंकिंग शेयरों का जो मूवमेंट है उसे आप किस तरीके से देख रहे हैं, और क्या आने वाले समय में निवेश के लिहाज से हम देख सकते हैं कि बैंकिंग शेयर कुछ फायदा देते हुए नजर आए?
नहीं, बिल्कुल। देखिए, बैंकिंग सेक्टर में अभी हम कंसोलिडेशन देख रहे हैं, तो सरकारी बैंक हो या प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक हो या नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंस कंपनी हो, लोगों ने पिछले 12 महीने में बैंकिंग सेक्टर में बहुत तेजी देखी है, बहुत सारा पैसा भी कमाया। लेकिन अभी थोड़ा सा कंसोलिडेशन इसलिए दिख रहा है क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं मार्केट में ऐसे रिपोर्ट है कि क्रेडिट कॉस्ट, जो इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट होता है बैंकों का, वो बढ़ने वाला है। उसके बाद क्रेडिट ग्रोथ जो अभी 14-15% है, वो भी ऐसा अनुमान है कि अगले 3-4 महीने के लिए जो भी बैंक्स के ज्यादा कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड है उनको तकलीफ होगी। बट अदरवाइज हमको लग रहा है कि देखिए, बैंकिंग में अभी भी मौके बहुत बड़े हैं, क्योंकि जिस प्रकार का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का बजट गवर्नमेंट ने बजट में अनाउंस किया है 10 लाख करोड़ का, इसका फायदा बड़े बैंक जैसे SBI है, उसके बाद बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा है, ICICI बैंक है, एक्सिस बैंक है, जो बड़े बैंक है जिनका बड़ा नेटवर्क है, उनको जरूर फायदा मिलेगा। बट कहीं ना कहीं छोटे बैंकों के लिए थोड़ी सी तकलीफ हमको दिख सकती है। तो बैंकों के लिए मुझे लग रहा है कि अगले 6-12 महीने जरूर अच्छे रहेंगे, लेकिन आपको बहुत सिलेक्टिव रहना है, क्योंकि अभी सारे बैंक भागे और हर बैंक आपको शायद इतना मुनाफा का रिस्क रिवॉर्ड दे नहीं सकता।
Avinash, when you see the portfolio of, the average person investing, and people say always diversify, have some in real estate, some in gold, some in like precious metals, and some in stocks and SIPs. What do you think now? Take the last 1 year, we've been through a difficult time. We have recovered. I think India has fared better than the rest of the world. Do you think the proportion of investment, and I think the Indian market's behavior has, built a little more trust that mid to long term, it's a good place to stay. Do you think more should be diverted in the portfolio towards that?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the asset allocation strategy of any investor who's got at least the next 1 to 2 years time frame, I think he should definitely look at equities, because my sense is that, there are many companies which have now shown very strong performances in Q4 FY23, and I think the going forward, the business outlook looks promising. And I think here I would like to say that, sectors like automobiles, auto components, capital goods, cement, infra, real estate. I mean, these are all sectors where the demand is growing significantly. So I think it would be a good strategy to at least allocate 60% of your funds to, the equity markets, and the rest 30 to 35% could be given sectors like income bonds, typically gold, or a small amount allocated to real estate. But the bigger portion should obviously be in equity, because our sense is that outperformance will continue. Of course, the markets will be volatile because, a lot of state elections are lined up. Next year, the general elections are going to be there. So the markets will definitely be a little volatile, but I think the right stock picking can give good rewards, for investors.
और अब नजर डाल लेते हैं रुपए के प्रदर्शन पर। विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में रुपया आज $1 की तुलना में 82 रुपए 39 पैसे के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। डॉलर के मुकाबले विश्व की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की स्थिति दर्शाने वाला डॉलर इंडेक्स अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में 102.84 पर चल रहा था। बात करते हैं एशियाई बाजारों की और यूरोपीय बाजारों की। एशियाई शेयर बाजारों में आज कारोबार मिला जुला रहा। जापान का निकेई 0.8% चढ़ा और दक्षिण कोरिया के कोस्पी में 0.6% की बढ़त दर्ज हुई। वहीं दूसरी तरफ हांगकांग के हैंग सेंग में 2.1% का नुकसान देखा गया और सिंगापुर का स्टेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स 1.3% की गिरावट के साथ बंद हुआ। चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 0.2% के मामूली नुकसान में रहा। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में भी मिला-जुला रुख और सीमित दायरे में कारोबार देखा गया। लंदन का FTSE 100 और फ्रांस का CAC 40 दोनों 0.1% के मामूली नुकसान में चल रहे थे। जर्मनी का डेक्स 0.4% के लाभ के साथ कारोबार कर रहा था।
A look at the U.S. market now. U.S. stock indices closed lower yesterday after a disappointing retail sales data for April, which pointed to softer consumer spending. Uncertainties about interest rates and debt limit negotiations also weighed on sentiment. The Dow Jones Industrial Average declined 1%, the S&P 500 fell 0.6%, and the Nasdaq Composite Index ended marginally down by 0.2%. Avinashi, your holistic perspective on how international markets are performing and a little bit about the direction in which they are likely to go and some factors, please.
I think, as I mentioned, see, the U.S. markets will be guided now in the very near term based on what kind of commentary and what kind of decision comes on the U.S. debt default issue, whether the debt ceiling in the U.S. is increased, whether more money printing is allowed. I think the second option looks very difficult. So I think a consensus will have to be built whether what is the debt ceiling and whether, there is any, possibility of any defaults in the U.S. debt market. Our sense is that Janet Yellen, has already commented that there is a possibility that U.S. debt could possibly show a default, which looks a very remote possibility. But if that happens, then I think we could see a kind of a medium to small correction in the U.S. market. Some solution here would definitely go a long way. So near term, the markets are going to remain very volatile in U.S. European markets, I don't think is going to show any major upside or downside. I think already the ECB has taken a rate hike, and they are also bothered about how inflation, comes down significantly. So I think the clear indication in the very near term will be on the macros in the U.S. market. And I think clearly some solution will be, arrived at. So there's nothing to worry. But yes, in the very near term, there could be a little volatility in the U.S. market. Could obviously have some overhang on the Indian markets and other emerging markets.
Right. A look at the oil prices now. Oil prices were steady today after a surprise rise in U.S. crude inventories. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $75.05 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude price was at $70 per barrel when reports last came in. Avinashi, a quick response to, oil prices, the basis of all transportation, other prices and inflation. How do you see this panning out for our inflation? Steadying news?
So I think it's definitely good news for us. See, if crude prices continue to remain where they are at around $70 a barrel or correct further, then I think that is good news for India because crude has got a very strong correlation with inflation. Hopefully, if crude remains soft, then I think we could possibly be looking at some sort of peaking out of inflation in the next, say, couple of months. So I think it's going to be a good, indicator. Crude continues to remain soft. This is not only going to help inflation coming down, but to a large extent, a lot of industries in India depend on crude as their basic raw material like tires, carbon black, chemicals. So I think this is going to actually result in a very strong kind of profit accretion to these kind of companies which operate in these sectors. So net, it's a good sign. We only hope that crude does not go up due to any geopolitical factors, which at least as of now don't seem to be, very much possible.
Right.
जी, अब बात कर लेते हैं कीमती धातुओं की। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में जून में आपूर्ति किए जाने वाला सोना 60,275 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम के आसपास चल रहा था। जुलाई अनुबंध वाली चांदी 130 रुपए टूटकर 72,460 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम पर कारोबार कर रही थी। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार में न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोना मंदी के साथ $1,991.90 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रहा था। अविनाश जी, बहुत संक्षेप में जानना चाहेंगे, सोने की कीमतें अभी हम देख रहे थे कुछ दिन पहले 62,000 तक पहुंची थी और अब हम थोड़ा सा गिरावट का रुख देख रहे हैं। क्या ये गिरावट की तरफ ही जाएगी कीमतें सोने की, या हम आगे फिर से इसमें तेजी की उम्मीद कर सकते हैं?
मुझे लग रहा है कि देखिए, बाजार में जिस प्रकार का सिग्नल कहीं न कहीं थोड़ी इम्प्रूवमेंट के लिए जगह है और कहीं ना कहीं ग्लोबल मार्केट्स भी कि इन्फ्लेशन कैसे होगा, लिक्विडिटी, ऑब्वियसली इंटरेस्ट रेट्स अगर वहां पे थोड़े से होते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ राइट, विल डेफिनेटली बी ए गुड
Good sign. Absolutely. Right. Avinashi, thank you so much for coming on to our program. And now a quick look at the headlines. Union government approves PLI scheme 2.0 for IT hardware with outlay of 17,000 crore rupees. Union cabinet gives nod for 1,08,000 crore rupees fertilizer subsidy for the Kharif season. And key domestic indices log losses of more than 0.5%. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra. Namaskar.
Market Mantra.